Okay, everyone, I'll avoid using the R word, but if anyone deserves an R, it's whoever was in charge of seating for the BAFTA award ceremony. Now, the BAFTA is the British equivalent of the Academy Awards. Now, here's the incident that shocked the world.
Good evening. Delroy and I are delighted to be presenting the first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making.
We're here to celebrate the artists who expand what's possible on screen.
Effects can create spectacle, but the best work serves character and story.
Okay, the word that I bleeped out, which the BBC didn't bleep out for some reason, even with a 2-hour delay, and I'll talk about that later, is the N word. Now, a man with Tourette syndrome, John Davidson, was seated in the front row of the audience near a microphone. Now, later, he even questioned why the event planners seated him there. Now, Davidson is an activist for Tourette syndrome awareness. Now, he's suffered from the neurobiological condition his entire life. They made a movie about him called I Swear, because one of the conditions that affect Tourette sufferers is coprolalia, which causes the individual to blurt out curse words. Now, it's involuntary. It's caused by a neurological abnormality. So it's profanity, racial slurs, sexual comments, all kinds of inappropriate remarks that just spill out of his mouth involuntarily. Now, for example, Davidson, when he met the Queen, blurted out, "F the Queen." Now, apparently, he's also told the police, "I have a bomb," that sort of thing. If the Tourette syndrome is very severe, as it is with John Davidson, they're at risk of being physically attacked on the street because of involuntary tics in which they shout offensive words at people who don't know about the medical condition. Now, Tourette sufferers are also at greater risk for suicide because of their condition. So, the inclusion of John Davidson in the BAFTA ceremony was a major step in increasing awareness and easing their suffering, but it was managed poorly. Now, for example, Davidson offended Jamie Foxx. Now, he didn't attend the ceremony, but he watched the BBC broadcast. Now, on his Twitter, he said that John Davidson meant that S. Out of all the words you could have said, Tourette's makes you say that? F that. He knew what the F he was doing. Why didn't he yell that when someone else was on stage? Now, Jamie Foxx wasn't alone in believing that it was deliberate or that Davidson indeed had control of his words. Now, here's a tweet that asks, why did he use a racial slur when 2 black presenters were on stage? And some folks questioned whether Tourette's is just the lack of a filter, and maybe they believe the words that they blurt out. But African Americans who suffer from Tourette's have weighed in and put an end to that theory. Now, here's a clip of a young girl who has Tourette's. She has the verbal tics, body tics, and inappropriate comments. She also has inappropriate gestures, which you'll see.
Coprolalia causes involuntary swearing and inappropriate tics. This can include the N-word, slurs, etc. I am a black person and even I have the N-word tic and slurs as tics. This is something I don't see many talk about because of situations like this. Is it a disappointing thing, shut up, that it happened in public in front of that entire crowd, specifically to Michael B. Jordan and the other presenter?
Now, okay, she says she has the N-word tic as well. Now, that suggests to me, which is just my theory, okay, it seems to me there are certain words that are taboo in society, and because of that, those words become buried within the psyches of individuals who suffer from Tourette's. But where do the taboo words come from? Society. And society is to blame for the outbursts if we're going to blame anyone. My theory. Now, another facet of this discussion is the huge number of reactions from people who were offended. Now, I believe it's wrong to just dismiss these folks as ableist. Now, allegedly, they're not being sensitive to his disability, but let's be rational. They were offended by the N-word, which is offensive to hear even when it's involuntary. Now, these allegedly ableist folks were told he didn't mean it, so you need to get over it. Now, in the next clip, this lady who's been called ableist pushes back. Initially, she had called John Davidson a racist white man who was using his disability to justify racism. Now, she apologized for that characterization later after she had learned more about Tourette's and realized that his tics are genuinely involuntary. Now, in this clip I'm about to show, she argues that he should apologize anyway, the same way that she apologized because neither of them intended to be offensive, but they were offensive. Let's watch.
Of people like you that would say it is okay for Black people to just deal with it because he has Tourette syndrome, which only explains how it happens. It doesn't justify why it happens. And racism does not require intent to be racist. So while I accept that my ignorance in that moment harmed the community, both, Black, brown, and white who have Tourette's, and that is not my intention. And my intention is irrelevant because the impact is real.
Okay, the BAFTAs and the BBC, which aired the awards ceremony, apologized. Now, the first apology was like, there's a man in the room who has Tourette syndrome. His tics are involuntary. Sorry if you were offended. And maybe it's just a cultural difference? The N-word outburst aired on the BBC. Now, Davidson was ticking throughout the broadcast, and because of the 2-hour delay, all of his other tics got edited out. Now, the sexual innuendo tics, homophobic tics, but the BBC kept the N-word in the broadcast. Now, I'm speculating maybe they did it for ratings, for clicks. Now, the desperation of such a ploy would show how legacy media is being destroyed by digital. Now, that's my speculation. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm speculating. Now, here's a tweet that talks about Britain's history of racism. And another tweet that talks about the impact on Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. Now, they're big shots in America. In America, their good graces would outweigh the effort to include John Davidson in the ceremony. Okay, let's be real about that. Now, lots of people here, for instance, are saying Davidson shouldn't have been in the room. Hollywood is saying that. Now, you might disagree watching this. Piers Morgan, who's British, strongly disagrees, but Hollywood isn't his power base, and that tells us a lot. Now, what do I emphasize on this channel? Social dynamics. And Delroy Lindo said the BAFTAs didn't even try to contact him or Michael B. Jordan afterward, which the BAFTAs could never get away with here. Never. Now, regarding the tepid initial apology, I'll be even-handed. The BAFTAs and the BBC could have been afraid of legal action. Now, an apology isn't necessarily an admission of wrongdoing. It really isn't. But some folks might interpret it as such, and it might give some people ideas. And maybe that's why the BAFTAs were like, sorry if you were offended. Now, in the next clip, this individual, Jermaine Williams, is a very high-functioning person with Tourette's. I mean, his condition is not nearly as severe as John Davidson's. Jermaine Williams is the New York City public advocate. And he says that John Davidson should acknowledge the harm. He doesn't say apologize, he says acknowledge.
BAFTA should have done a lot more to explain what was going to happen before and after. Definitely should have provided more care for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo so they had the information they needed, and they themselves could have explained what was going on. BAFTA could have censored the damn thing. You had time to censor it and provide more information about what you were censoring and why. And I believe, although it may be hard, that John himself needs to make some comments here to acknowledge, even though there's a reason, there is harm that can be caused.
And I credit his statement a lot more than some alleged disability advocates who all of a sudden are disability advocates. And they say that Davidson shouldn't apologize, which I believe we all realize is counterproductive. Now, the entire point of inviting Davidson to the BAFTA ceremony was inclusion. And inclusion has a price. Now, if disabled folks are going to be part of society, they have to be bound by society's rules, just like everyone else. And those rules are not just there to serve people's egos. Now, some people might think so, but no. If disabled folks are willing to abide by the rules, they are moving away from victim status and moving toward being like everyone else. Now, we will cut them the slack that they need. Of course, no one's expecting perfection from them. They just need to do their best, and we will meet them the rest of the way. Now, John Davidson, to his credit, did issue an apology, which suggests to me he's a rational person. Now, there's folks that say, well, he's disabled and shouldn't apologize for his disability. I mean, that's harmful to John Davidson, okay? Because everyone apologizes. Everyone. Now, if he never needed to apologize, that really would mean that he doesn't belong in that environment. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.